This is the second part of Mississippi Studies, the Origins Test. And in this lesson, you'll learn to describe the people who first occupied the state of Mississippi. The first Mississippians, Native Americans. When a small band of Spaniards wandered into present-day Mississippi in 1540, they found a large number of native peoples whom they mistakenly identified as Indians. Who were these Native Americans and from where did they come? The answer is based on investigations of artifacts and early written and oral accounts by archaeologists, historians, and other scholars. These studies reveal that the earliest inhabitants of Mississippi were the descendants of many generations of peoples who had passed from northeastern Asia to Alaska across the frozen Bering Strait and then to all other regions of the Americas. The first nomadic peoples who crossed the strait landed in Mississippi region sometime between the years of 12,000 to 8,000 BC. They were attracted to the area by the region's favorable environment. From 1000 BC to 1000 AD, complex tribal organizations had formed which allowed them to make significant cultural advances. These people constructed burial mounds, practiced farming, developed trade networks, and made highly useful cultivation tools and weaponry. These patterns of migration continued through the 1600s, which produced numerous large villages characterized by reliance on agriculture and political, economic, social, and religious organization. By the 16th century, as many as 200,000 native Mississippians lived in this area. Europeans. The first European explorer to venture into the territory now known as Mississippi was Hernando de Soto, who passed through in 1540. Hernando de Soto was a Spanish explorer and conquistador. He was commissioned by King Charles I of Spain to explore Florida in return for a share of the gold, silver, pearls, and other riches that might be found there. Hernando de Soto had planned to explore America in hopes of finding a passage to the Orient. He selected 620 eager Spanish and Portuguese volunteers to join him on his quest. Young men averaging 24 years of age embarked from Havana, Cuba, on 7 of the king's ships and 2 of de Soto's. They brought with them tons of heavy armor and equipment and a livestock count that came to over 500 animals, including 237 horses and 200 pigs. The exact course of de Soto's expedition is subject to controversy among historians, but they do know that de Soto landed in the southeastern states in 1540. Although the promise of riches motivated them, the Spaniards justified their expedition by expressing their intention to spread Christianity among the Native Americans, whom the Spanish Catholics regarded as heathens in need of converting. Upon meeting the Native Americans, explorers treated them poorly, even though the natives were initially friendly. The invaders were probably viewed by the Native Americans as new trading partners. Soon after their meeting, De Soto and his men took hundreds of Native Americans captive before slaughtering them. They would attack villages whether or not the inhabitants resisted them. Having been on land for several months, the Spaniards were running low on supplies, so they gave up their hunt for treasures and searched mainly for food. On May 8, 1541, De Soto and his men reached the Mississippi River in present-day Tunica County. It is unclear whether he was the first European to see the Great River. However, he is the first to document this fact in official reports. Hernando de Soto named the river El Rio de la Florida River. He died shortly after on May 21, 1542. His men covered his corpse in blankets weighted with sand and sank it in the middle of the Mississippi River during the night. According to some estimates, the Native American population in this region dwindled to a mere 40,000 persons as a result of De Soto's expedition. This is about 20% of the original population of 200,000 Native Americans. Reasons for the depopulation include disease brought by the explorers and a decrease in a self-sufficient way of life. Native Americans became more and more dependent on European tools, weapons, and alcohol, resources which did not always benefit their tribes. Major tribes of Mississippi. By the late 17th century, three major tribes composed most of the Native American population of Mississippi: the Natchez, the Choctaw, and the Chickasaw. Natchez tribe. Approximately 4,500 people made up the Natchez tribe. They were mainly concentrated in the southwestern region of the state, about 12 miles south of present-day Natchez in Adams County. This tribe worshiped the sun as a supreme god, and they believed in life after death. In extreme cases, they offered sacrifices of infants and children to appease the wrath of the sun god. When an important member of the tribe died, several people were sacrificed to assist that member in his or her next life. The Natchez tribe was divided into two social groups: the noblemen, which were the sons, and the common people called the stinkards. Women held the highest social positions among the sons. The men of the tribe constructed huts like the one shown here. Great Son, the chief of the Natchez, was, in the beginning, a friend to the white man until the arrogance of one explorer brought destruction on the whole colony. M.D. Chopert, a French commander, was guilty of great injustices toward the Native Americans. Wanting their land for himself, he ordered the Great Son to leave the village of his ancestors. His demands ignited a great battle between the French and the Natchez on November 29, 1729. The Native Americans were victorious, slaughtering every man with the exception of two, and taking the French women and children as slaves or captives. The two Frenchmen who survived were hiding in the nearby woods and watched their countrymen get slaughtered. They escaped to New Orleans, where they told the tale of the battle. When news of the battle reached New Orleans, the French started a war with the Natchez in hopes of getting rid of them all. The tribe was eventually driven across the Mississippi River and finally scattered and removed. The Great Son and his principal war chiefs fell into the hands of the French and were shipped to St. Domingo, where they were sold into slavery. Some of the prisoners were treated with excessive cruelty. 4 of the men and 2 of the women were publicly burned to death in New Orleans. Choctaws. The Choctaws formed the largest tribe in Mississippi, once having as many as 20,000 members across the state. Nanaweya, a large mound located in Winston County, belonged to the Choctaws. According to traditional beliefs, the mound was the sacred origin of the Choctaw. This mound was also the headquarters of the tribe. Nanaweya is believed by some Choctaw to be the mother mound where the first Choctaw was created. Others believe Nanaweya is the location where the Choctaw tribe stopped wandering and settled down. As told by some Choctaw storytellers, it was either Nanaweya or a cave nearby from which the Choctaw people emerged from out of the earth. Another story of the Choctaw settlement can be found in George Catlin's Smithsonian Report of 1885, which includes a story of the Choctaw following one of its prophets from an origin in the West. The Choctaws, a great many winters ago, commenced moving from the country where they then lived, which was a great distance to the west of the great river and the mountains of snow, and they were a great many years on their way. A great medicine man led them the whole way by going before with a red pole, which he stuck in the ground every night where they encamped. This pole was every morning found leaning to the east, and he told them that they must continue to travel to the east until the pole would stand upright in their encampment, and that there the Great Spirit had directed that they should live. According to the story, it was at Nanaweya that the pole finally stood straight. Nanaweya, which means leaning hill, stooping hill, or place of creation in Choctaw, was the tribe's final settling place. Choctaw families were closely knit. Parents were very strict with their children, and sexual immorality was forbidden. Farming was preferred over warfare, which is probably the reason that this tribe was the most populous of any other Mississippi tribe. Native American stickball, the oldest field sport in America, was also known as the little brother of war because of its roughness and substitution for war. When disputes arose between Choctaw communities, stickball provided a peaceful way to settle the issue. The stickball games would involve as few as 20 or as many as 300 players. The goalposts range anywhere from a few hundred feet to 5 miles apart. Today, the Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians still plays stickball. 9 treaties were signed between the Choctaws and the United States government between the years of 1786 and 1830. The last and most significant treaty was the Treaty of Dancing Rabbit Creek. The treaty signed away the remaining traditional homeland of the Choctaw to the United States. However, Article 14 of that treaty allowed for some Choctaws to remain in the state of Mississippi. Those who signed Article 14 later formed the Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians. In the Treaty of Dancing Rabbit Creek, Choctaw Chief Greenwood LaFleur ceded more than 10 million acres of land to the United States, land that eventually was divided into 16 Mississippi counties. LaFleur agreed to the removal of the majority of his people westward. Beginning in 1831 and ending in 1838, tens of thousands of Choctaw walked the 500-mile journey to Oklahoma. A bad blizzard in the region, combined with suffering due to lack of food, a wagon shortage, and death led to naming this journey the Trail of Tears. More than half of those who started out on the journey died before reaching Oklahoma. The Choctaws who lived to see the Indian Territory were organized as the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. Today, the Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians has one of the largest casinos located near Philadelphia, Mississippi. The Silver Star Casino opened its doors in 1994. The Golden Moon Casino opened in 2002. The casinos are collectively known as the Pearl River Resort. The Chickasaw. The Chickasaw tribe once numbered as many as 15,000 people before their contact with Europeans in 1540. By the 1600s, the tribe consisted of approximately 5,000. Before the United States government forced their removal from their homelands in the 1830s, the Chickasaw resided in North Mississippi with their villages centered between the Yazoo River and the Tombigbee River near present-day Tupelo. They also claimed lands covering present-day western Tennessee. Their population numbers fluctuated over the 18th century from between 2,000 to 5,000 people. From their closely related languages, the Chickasaw and Choctaw appear to have been part of the same tribe when they lived west of the Mississippi River. At one point, they parted ways and eventually became enemies. While surrounding tribes suffered from diseases brought by Hernando de Soto and his men, the small scattered villages of the Chickasaw appear to have suffered less than their neighbors. Because of their relatively small population and because enemies, both Native American and European, lived all around them, the Chickasaw placed a great emphasis on military skill. In ancient times, they were revered as Spartans of the lower Mississippi Valley. They were considered to be the fiercest warriors in the entire Southeast. During war, the Chickasaw would withdraw into several large fortified villages nestled in the rugged hills east of the Mississippi River, making it very difficult for their enemies to attack them. In the winter of 1540 to 41, the Chickasaw had an unwelcome visit by Hernando de Soto and his men. After finally driving them away, the Chickasaw managed to avoid European contact for the next 100 years. In the late 17th century, English traders began working their way into the Mississippi Valley, along with their cotton cloth, metal tools, knives, guns, iron pots, and other goods. As the Chickasaw became more dependent on the Europeans, they widened their hunting grounds to obtain more skins for trade, which resulted in war with the Choctaw and other neighboring tribes. In the early 18th century, the French, moving north from the Gulf of Mexico, tried to establish control of the Mississippi Valley. The next 60 years would see constant warfare between the Chickasaw-backed British and the French with their Native American allies. This period, however, took its toll on the once powerful Chickasaw tribe. Many warriors were lost in battle, and although their numbers were replaced by captives taken in war, the Chickasaw spirit was weakened. By the late 18th century, the scene had changed, and the Chickasaw found themselves caught between American and Spanish interests. The Louisiana Purchase and the Spanish cession of Florida made it clear that it would be the Americans that the Chickasaws and other eastern tribes would have to deal with eventually. By the early 19th century, finding meat in the region was difficult, so the Chickasaw resorted to becoming successful farmers. Some started cotton plantations with field labor performed by black slaves, of which the tribe owned more than 1,000. European settlers flooding into the area at that time coveted the Native American lands. Between 1801 and 1832, the Chickasaw signed a series of treaties giving up their lands and agreeing to migrate to Indian Territory, now Oklahoma, where some 5,000 Chickasaw and 1,000 slaves settled on land bought from the Choctaw Nation. Concentrating on agriculture, the Chickasaw were producing a surplus of crops by 1843. By the 1850s, they had set up sawmills, blacksmith shops, newspapers, and schools. During the Civil War, the Chickasaw fought on the side of the Confederacy. After the war, white settlers began pouring into Indian Territory. In 1906, the tribal governments of the 5 civilized tribes, Cherokee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, Creek, and Seminole, were dissolved. By the late 1970s, the Chickasaw were well absorbed into non-Indian society, with about 7,000 living in Oklahoma. The supreme god of the Chickasaw was Ababanili, a combination of the 4 beloved things above: sun, clouds, clear sky, and he that lives in the clear sky. The Halakas, or healers, were responsible for trying to cure illnesses within the tribe with the aid of potions and teas derived from various herbs, roots, and berries. The Chickasaw believed in a hereafter in which the good would go to their reward somewhere in the heavens, while the evildoers would wander forever in the land of the witches. When a person died, a grave was dug under his or her house, and the body, with its face painted red, was placed in a sitting position facing west, surrounded by his worldly possessions. Next, I'm going to have the vocabulary on the screen. Be sure to go over these terms. They were mentioned in the lesson and will be a good source for answers to your test questions. If you have any questions, just send me an email. If you have any problems locating this information, please just let me know.